Hello, my name is Katie Reichel, and this is my topic presentation for Kim. I will be discussing sports betting throughout this presentation. So, the contents of this presentation include a definition of what sports betting is, the terms explained when betting on sports, the next steps including parlay and teasers, as well as ethics, a case study, and what we can do moving forward in terms of keeping sports ethical while allowing sports betting. So what is sports betting? Sports betting is the activity of predicting sports results and placing a wager on the outcome. This can be done in professional and amateur levels. Terms explain: straight bets and prop. A straight bet is an individual wager on the outcome of a single event. Straight bets include spreads, money lines, and totals, also referred to as over-unders. So let's break down the terms. When you are betting against the spread, you are not betting on which team will win the game. Rather, you are betting on the margin of victory or defeat. So you're not really asking who will win the game, rather how much will they win by. Whereas a money line is a straight up bet on the outcome of this game. The favorite is always indicated by a minus sign, and the underdog is indicated by a plus sign on the bets. A total, or as I said earlier, also referred to as a over-under, is a bet on the total amount of points scored in the game by both teams combined. Props are sometimes called sides. This is because they allow bettors to wager specific events within a game rather than the game itself. So, for example, say you have the Knicks playing the Suns in basketball, and you bet that the Suns are going to win the tip-off. Or you can bet on individual players' performance, such as, I think LeBron James will score 25 points this game. That's basically what a prop is. So then the next steps are parlay and teasers. A parlay is a bet that is dependent on the combined outcome of two or more wagers. These wagers can be a mixture of multiple types of bets, including spreads, money lines, and over-unders. The parlay pays out if each wager with it is covered. Whereas a teaser combines three or more point spread wagers into a single bet and allows the bettor to adjust the spreads favorably. So now let's talk about ethics. Gambling is a big business in America, and you will see that in the case study on the next slide. However, it creates issues for both professional and amateur levels. The issue comes in when players are gambling on the outcome of their own game. This strikes at the very core of integrity of the game. So what I mean by that is, say you have a player that's betting they're only gonna win or lose by 6. That definitely affects the outcome of the game because that player's performance is skewed based on them trying to win a bet for either themselves or someone else. So that way that bet would, I don't want to say come true, but would see through. So in this video, I have a case study that we actually discussed.
Parties in this case are Chris Christie, governor of New Jersey, and the National Collegiate Athletic Association, along with all of the biggest names in amateur and professional sports: the National Football League, National Basketball Association, National Hockey League, and the Office of the Commissioner of Baseball. This dispute arose because New Jersey wants to legalize sports betting at casinos and racetracks throughout the state. Atlantic City, New Jersey is not the glorious mecca that perhaps it once was, and New Jersey is interested in giving a boost to that industry. However, there is a law called the Professional and Amateur Sports Protection Act of 1992, which says that no government entity may authorize, license, endorse, promote sports betting by law or compact. And so there's a clash between what New Jersey wants to do and what Congress has made it illegal for New Jersey to do. The NCAA is opposed to sports gambling, and the professional sports leagues take the same position on the grounds that betting on sports could corrupt the game, and that they want to preserve to the greatest degree possible the sanctity of the sporting matches. In brief, this case is about principles of federalism versus broad exercise of federal power. The core issue in this case is whether Congress can forbid the state of New Jersey from partially lifting its existing bans on sports betting. The constitutional question is whether the 10th Amendment and the anti-commandeering doctrines of federalism support New Jersey's efforts, or whether Congress has the power under the Commerce Clause and under federal preemption doctrine to regulate state lawmaking in this fashion. The anti-commandeering doctrine was developed by the Supreme Court in a pair of cases from the 1990s, New York versus United States and Prince versus United States. In essence, it says that the federal government may not compel state officials to enforce federal law, that the states cannot be commandeered by the federal government, cannot be dragooned into action by the federal government to enforce federal regulatory preferences. The strongest argument that the state of New Jersey and Governor Chris Christie has is that the PSPA is telling the states what to do, reaching down into the state legislature, and in fact, forbidding state lawmakers from repealing one of their own laws. The 10th Amendment reserves powers to the states and means that Congress cannot tell the states how to legislate in this area, that Congress may not and cannot, under the 10th Amendment, dictate the terms of a state law, as the PSPA is doing here. The strongest argument for the NCAA is that this is a run-of-the-mill example of Congress regulating interstate economic activity that has a substantial impact on interstate commerce. You have the federal government and you have the biggest names in amateur and professional sports saying that there is a federal law that prohibits the state of New Jersey from doing this. And the federal law is rooted in longstanding principles of federal regulatory power, and that New Jersey's arguments are quite novel, that this is the sort of situation that's never arose before, and that the Supreme Court should clearly side with settled federal policy. The ramifications of a victory for the state of New Jersey in this case is that, first and foremost, New Jersey gets to legalize sports betting in the fashion that it's done so far, which is a limited repeal of existing laws. So sports betting would proceed at casinos and racetracks throughout the state. If the NCAA prevails in this case, it's basically the status quo, which is that the PSPA remains on the books, it's not struck down, and New Jersey and any other state that's interested in partially legalizing sports betting cannot do so on its own. It basically remains in the hands of Congress.
All right. Oh, sorry. There we go. So as you can see through that video, there's a big debate going on with sports betting and gambling. As you can see, New Jersey wanted to bring it in so that way they can make more income for their state. However, Congress wanted to keep the integrity of the sport. So there is a big debate going on.
The parties in this case are
Sorry.
Chris Christie, governor of New Jersey,
sorry.
and the
There we go. So what can we do moving forward in terms of sports betting? If sports gambling is not properly regulated, it can certainly provide a risk of the integrity of the game. Before 2018, the 1992 Professional Sports Protection Act made sports betting illegal throughout the country, with the exception of 4 states. Those 4 states were Oregon, Delaware, Montana, and licensed sports pools, for example, Nevada, so Las Vegas. But why those states got the exception is because they already had existing sports lotteries in place. However, now 30 states and the District of Columbia currently have sports betting legislator. With it now being legal, I think it is important that the integrity of the game continues. Players and families of players should be excluded from making bets on their games because it comes into the issue with the integrity of the game. As I discussed earlier, if a player is making a bet that they're going to win or lose by 6, that creates an issue with the integrity of playing the sport to the best of your performance. I believe there needs to be a monitoring process for players and what they are doing with their money and different types of incomes players get, whether that be sponsorships, stuff like that. And especially with the whole NIL now legal with the NCAA and college athletes, there needs to be some type of monetization. So that way, there's no athlete that is performing better or worse than their ability, just so that way they get some type of monetary incentive for playing better or worse than they actually would have. And then these are the sources I used throughout my presentation. One of those is in the online book of the sports management professionals. I thank you so much for listening, and I hope you learned something and enjoyed. Bye-bye.